So in this lesson, you're going to be looking at real numbers again, but this time we're going to be finding a percentage of a quantity. So say 50% of a number or 30% of another number, okay? So our learning intention is to develop our ability to find a percentage of a number. Now I'll be teaching you how to do that without the calculator as well as with the calculator, so you can choose the method that you prefer. So if you're not using a calculator, you need to be able to find 10% of a number using your knowledge of place value. And we've been doing that a little bit in our previous videos when we've been talking about moving around the decimal place. And then you can also find multiples and factors of 10%. So you could find 20%, 30%, 40% because they're multiples of 10%. But you can also say find 1% or 5% or 2% because that's a factor of 10% as well. All right, so for this first example, we're asked to find 10% of 120. Okay, so what we know about percentages is that if 100% of 120 is 120, then 10% is going to be one decimal place over. Okay, because this is also one decimal place. This is one place less, so this needs to be one place less. Okay, so that would make it 12. All right, if that's a little bit confusing for you in order like the moving of the decimal, the way that you can do it is to find 10% of 120 using the calculator is converting this to a decimal, which is 0.10, of changes to a times, and then you just leave 120 the same. So if I go 0.10 times 120, I'm going to get 12 anyway, okay? So this is a whole number. This isn't 12%, this is just 12. So 10% of 120 is 12. All right, so for this next one, we need to find 30% of 80, okay? So same as in the last question, like if we know 100% of 80 is 80, and 10% is going to be one decimal jump back because it's one jump back over here. So if 10% is 8, then I know that 30% is going to be 3 lots of 8, because going from 10 to 30%, it's 3 lots of 10%. Okay, so then I need to know 3 lots of 8. So 8, 16, 24. So 30% of 80 is going to be 24. If that is confusing for you and you'd like to use the calculator method, then we know we want 30% of 80. We change this to a decimal, 0.3. We change this to a times, and we keep that the same. Then we do it on the calculator. We'd go 0.3 times 80, and that's going to give us 24. Okay, so this is our non-calculator method, and this is our calculator method. So this is the last example that we're going to do, and we're trying to find 2.5% of 40. So what we can already see is that this is less than 10%. So we're going to need to use our knowledge of factors of 10. Okay, so if 100% is 40, I'm going to still use my knowledge of 10%. Okay, knowing that this is going to have to jump back 1 if I'm doing 10%. So that means that 10% is 4. I know that 2.5 is a quarter of 10, but instead of jumping straight to that, I'm just going to halve it first. So 5% is half of 10. So I can do half of 4, and that will be 5%. So that would be 2, because 2 is half of 4, 5 is half of 10. Okay, I'm still not at 2.5 yet. So 2.5%, I know that 2.5 is half again of 5. So then I know I need to half what's on this side as well. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I know that 2.5% of 40 is 1, using my knowledge of 10% and its factors, or numbers that go into it. Okay, now if this is confusing for you, you're going to just go 2.5% of 40. This is our calculator method. Okay, so I'm going to convert that to a decimal, which is 0.025 times 40. The of gets changed to a time sign. 0.025, oh, that's 0.025 times 40 is 1. So that is the calculator method as well. Okay, so there's 2 different ways there for you that you can find a percentage of a quantity. So if we think back to our success criteria, it was to use your knowledge of place value and your knowledge of 10%, being able to find 10% to then find other percentages as well. So this is our knowledge of place value. This is an example of using factors. The previous question was an example of using multiples, okay? And then alternatively, if you are confused by this method or you feel like it's not something you want to try straight away, then there is a calculator method there for you as well. Okay, so if you can do either of these things, then you've met today's success criteria.